Hello everyone. I'm about to read you the story of my first birth, which was a home birth. And when I was preparing for labor with my first birth, I watched a ton of YouTube videos on home births, which really helped me. And so this is kind of my way of contributing to any woman that's considering a home birth, or even if you just want to be entertained by a birth story or home birth story. I typed this out 3 days postpartum, and I'm glad that I did because I forget a lot of these details. I remember other details which I'm going to add in, but I'm just going to read this real and raw story. Okay, here we go. Around 7 p.m. on Wednesday, April 6th, early labor began. The contractions were mild. I would still breathe through them. We let our midwife know. She recommended dinner and then bed ASAP. Rob and I had a good hearty meal of chicken, rice, and broccoli, and I went to bed. I do think it's hilarious that I misspelled my husband's very easy spellable name on here. I spelled it as R-O-N, Ron, not Rob. I slept as well as I could. The contractions would wake me up, but I would fall back asleep. Around 4 a.m. or so, they were strong enough to keep me awake, so I stayed awake. They would last almost a minute long, with 4 to 8 minutes in between. It was already feeling like hard work, and I knew that it would only get more challenging. I found that focusing on my breathing while walking during a contraction helped a lot. We called our doula over. We hadn't actually seen her since we first met at the beginning of pregnancy when we initially hired her, because I really wanted a doula. I had heard really, really good things about how doulas can be very helpful during labor and delivery. I had expressed a concern to my midwife and Rob about a week prior that I was a bit disappointed that our doula did not make an effort to get to know us during our pregnancy. It even stated on our contract that we would receive 2 meetings before delivery. And our communication was not the best when we did try to reach her. I noticed a shift in my own labor environment when she came over, and I realized pretty quickly that I did not want her there at all. I will say I do remember that she was complaining about the traffic, and this, I'm going through contractions, and she's in the room. She had just gotten there. She's just talking about the traffic and like just the area where she lived. And meanwhile, like, I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, okay, I'm pretty sure we didn't hire you to complain when you're over here about traffic. And also, I think I requested a birth ball, and I don't see a birth ball here. Maybe it's in your car, but I'd hoped that I would see it and be able to use it right away. So yeah, there's a shift in my mood. Rob and I already had discussed that we could always send her home if I wasn't comfortable, so we sent her home. We both felt very much at peace with our decision. The rest of the day, the contractions continued, but I didn't see any signs of active labor beginning. I think I cried twice during this early labor stage. A few negative thoughts came into my head that I expressed to my husband. This is hard work, and it's only early labor. I would glance at my birth tub, knowing I couldn't fill it up until the midwives got there. But I wanted that kind of relief so badly. Okay. I initially thought active labor would come sooner, but I decided to still take advantage of this time and lay down and rested with one leg elevated over a pillow while watching the latest episode of This Is Us. Sometimes I would have to pause the show to focus on a contraction. Rob and I also went for 2 short walks. I didn't get too far with the second walk because I was using the bathroom so much. In between contractions, I would still feel a pelvic pressure. We ate the leftover chicken and rice for dinner with some spinach. I didn't have much of an appetite, but I knew that it would be beneficial for my energy. I took maybe 3 bites and ran to the toilet, where I immediately vomited twice. Our midwife had told us that I would likely throw up during labor. I got really excited. I don't think I'd ever been excited about vomiting. She texted us back excitedly and said vomiting was pretty much equivalent to 10 contractions. Woohoo! At 7 p.m., Rob encouraged me to lay down again. Once I did, I felt a gush of water and suspected that my water broke. We contacted our midwife, who had me checked using a long Q-type thing in the home birth supply kit. Once we sent her a picture, she confirmed that my water did indeed break. Yes! It was finally go time. The midwives headed our way. During a few contractions, I tried the comb trick, which I read can help with pain management during labor. I either was doing it wrong or had the wrong combs, because it wasn't long until I tossed them to the side and just continued to focus on my breathing as I paced back and forth in the living room. We started filling the tub as soon as our midwife got there. She checked my blood pressure and baby's heartbeat in between my contractions as I continued to breathe and walk around the living room. We had spent many hours with this midwife during prenatal meetings, and she brought such a peace to the environment, which was so beneficial. She actually kind of felt like my doula. I could tell that my body was starting to feel different. I felt warm, almost in a drunk, surreal type state, but also in control. I got the go-ahead to hop in the tub, and it felt amazing. The contractions were still coming on strong, but the water provided a great relief, and I loved it. The second midwife showed up. I expressed to her almost immediately, I feel like I could fall asleep during contractions, and she encouraged me to. I closed my eyes as I rested my head on the tub, with Rob sitting in a chair right next to me. It was quiet, which helped me tremendously. The two midwives set up and then went to a different room to give Rob and I some privacy and quiet, which I so appreciated. Contractions were feeling intense, but I continued to breathe through them, every so often telling Rob things like, "This is so hard, there's so much pressure." At one point, I began moaning while exhaling, and the two midwives came back into the room as soon as they heard me. I had been in the tub for about 40 minutes by that point, and one of the midwives offered to check how dilated I was. I had initially not wanted cervical checks due to not wanting to be disappointed if it was a lower number, so I was hesitant, but I agreed knowing that they would have some positions and things that I could try if I wasn't fully dilated by that point. They got me out of the tub and into my favorite cozy robe and onto my bed on top of protective covers. One midwife described what I would be feeling, and as soon as she began, she chuckled and said, "Lauren, I just felt your baby's head. It is right there." My mind was blown. I couldn't believe it. Apparently, I had been breathing my baby down during contractions, and I didn't even realize it. So one thing I'm going to add is that I had practiced breathing for just months before labor. And I told my midwife too. I said, "Hey, like I want to try to breathe my baby down." And she was supportive and encouraging, but she also said only about 10% of moms can breathe their baby down. 10% of first-time moms can breathe their baby down. So I was like, okay, I understand that. I want to try it anyway. And so it was a really great kind of like, yay, go mama moment. It was exciting. So they said that this meant that I could start pushing and asked if I wanted to get back in the tub and push or push here on the bed. I figured I'm already here on the bed and feeling good, so let's just do it here. I then pushed for the next hour and 40 minutes, but it did not feel like that long to me. I began pushing on my hands and knees, and then after a bit switched to my right side, which is the side I typically sleep on, so it was a very comfortable position for me to push in. My midwives and Rob were all cheering each time I pushed my son a little further, saying, "Good, yes, nice push," which helped me tremendously with my confidence and perseverance. At one point, I turned to my husband and said, "I think I said during early labor that I didn't want to do this again, but I could totally do this again." I also complimented my midwives at least once in between contractions, telling them how amazing of a team they were. And they were like, "This is all you." The pushing was hard work too, but I love that I could at least feel the progress of his head descending, which kept me going. At one point, I felt a slight burning sensation, which my midwife said beforehand might happen. After I felt it, I said, "Is that as bad as it's going to get? That's really not as bad as I thought it would be." I didn't realize it at the time, but my midwives told me afterward that they were silently cracking up with the comments I was making, since the comments were more nonchalant and calm than what they usually witness. They mentioned something like that during my pushing, and I think my response to that was something like, Oh, but I do feel like I'm dying inside though. Here's a few other things I was saying. Once he's out, it's going to feel like instant relief, right? Can I just push whenever, or should I wait for a contraction to push? I just keep imagining the analogy with the inflatable balloon and the ping pong ball, and that's helping me visualize him coming down. And me to my husband. Can you see his head yet? What color is his hair? Is his head hanging out of me right now? With each contraction, I gave a push with all my might while exhaling / moaning loudly, and then pushed even more after that. By the last contraction, I was pushing maybe 4 times during one contraction. Just pushing with all my might, knowing that I was helping him descend, and knowing that I was so close to having him out. Last page. It was a wild and surreal experience once his head was fully out, and the rest of his body just slid right out with it. He was immediately placed on my chest, and my first response was, "Oh, wow!" We all immediately noticed his Italian features, which I was not expecting. I thought this whole time that he would have more of my husband's features. I didn't have any perennial tears, even though he came out sucking his thumb. I felt super awake and attentive after he was born, and since then, it's now 3 days postpartum. By the way, if you missed the beginning of the video, it is not 3 days postpartum. It's like 18, 19 months later, and I'm due with baby number 2. And since then, during the day, I felt happy, awake, even with lack of sleep, and energized. The midwives cleaned up and asked if I wanted any food or something to drink. And 10 minutes later, came back with a fresh grilled cheese and a small Pinot Grigio bottle that I had chilling in the fridge with a straw. I only took 2 sips and then forgot all about it. And that's my story. So I hope you enjoyed. I hope this inspired you if you're considering a home birth. And even if you're not, I just hope that you found this entertaining at least, and that you enjoyed the story of my first baby.